This is the Angel Connect podcast series, episode number 13, an interview with Shane Kelly of the Wolverine Angel Network. In this episode, Hall Martin interviews Shane Kelly, who is one of the leaders of the Wolverine Angel Network. Yes, he shows you the connection of how to make an angel network with alumni, with investment opportunities. And he also tells you about the success with his personal network. Now, Hall has asked him for the differences between the angel group network based on the inside of the university and others, and he explains that very clearly. He also discusses the network funding model, and that's going to be interesting, and the investment process that has a competitive benefit, speed, and Shane describes how that speed is obtained. And also, Hall then asks Shane about going into the crowdfunding environment, and you'll see the answer there. So this interview was conducted by Hall Martin over the telephone with Shane Kelly. Because it is over the telephone, you'll see a distinct quality difference between that and other podcasts that Hall Martin has done either in person or via Skype or other technologies. We ask you to please bear with it because the content is quite interesting. And so let's listen to this discussion during an interview that Hall Martin had with Shane Kelly of the Wolverine Angel Network. Let's listen in.
All right. Well, Shane, thanks for joining the Angel Connect podcast. I'd like to welcome you here and like to talk about your experience with the Wolverine Angel Network. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how the Wolverine Angel Network came to be?
Sure, absolutely. So my background in the startup world started in 2002. Went to work for a startup in the film industry called Green Street Films in New York City. And while I was there about 9 years, we raised about over $50 million with 30 of it coming from angels, and then scaled that business into the up over $10 million in revenue while I was there. So fast forward to, after that, I ended up getting kind of a later stage MBA from the University of Michigan, the Law School of Business. And while I was there, I was having conversations with the university, with an administrator at the university, and we had conversations about, he had started an initiative to connect, alumni who are investors with kind of university technology, and we kind of conspired to kind of spin that out of the university. That was his ask, and so we've now done that, and that was kind of the genesis of the Wolverine Angel Network. So what we are today, we've evolved from that kind of kernel into a group that's made up of two kind of parts. So one is the piece that connects, alumni in the startup world, in the venture capital world, and then the other is the venture that kind of pools alumni capital to invest in startups from anywhere, so not just University of Michigan companies.
I see. So can you tell me a little bit about the group, how big it is, and how you guys are organized?
Sure, yeah. So we have kind of a network of several hundred individuals who come from the corporate world, come from the venture capital world, and then come from, the startup world as entrepreneurs. And that is really kind of the strength of our group, is that, University of Michigan is the largest living alumni base of any elite university. We just have tremendous scale. So, for example, in Los Angeles alone, we have over 10,000 alumni. I've heard some estimates upwards of 16,000 in the LA area. So I focus on LA because that's where I live, and that's where we launched our first chapter. So at our first event here in LA, we actually had about 70 people come out to the event. We had 3 startups do a demo night, and of those probably, really only a handful are investors, but that's because our investor network is really distributed across the country.
So do you ever have them all come back to the university for a meeting, or is it purely distributed in the events that you guys have?
So we had an event last year in Austin, and we had one this year in Los Angeles, which is going to be a quarterly event. So the idea being gather alumni together who are in the Los Angeles area, and as I mentioned, we do have tremendous scale, which makes that possible, right? We can actually hit a critical mass of, I'm estimating about 50 or 100 investors just in the LA area. We're not there right now, but because we just launched the chapter a month ago. But that's kind of where we're scaling to. And then what we'll do is, we have city managers ready to launch chapters in various cities, including San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, Detroit, New York City. So that's kind of our approach. It's not to only bring people back to Michigan, but it's actually to kind of, bring people together in their own environment and where they're living.
So how does the deal flow process work with the Wolverine Angel Network? How do you source deals? You say they come from outside the Michigan community, but how do you find the deals, and then how do you bring them through the investor process?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So so as I mentioned, I was in the startup world for several years in New York City, and subsequent to that did short stints at 3 venture funds. So I have a network of, VCs, of entrepreneurs, and others, and so most of the deal flow really has come through my network so far. Fortunately, because we're growing this network, that's really expanding, right? So we also have a 3-person team of current MBA students at the University of Michigan, and they are on the team to kind of screen the deals and do a lot of the diligence that, we feel is really important to do. And we try to do that in a way that's really helpful to the entrepreneurs as well as helpful to potential investors, right? So trying to help entrepreneurs get their diligence rooms organized, trying to help them get a new kind of financial point of view on their company. So that's kind of the process is, I'm out there kind of having conversations and sourcing deals. We do keep a close eye on accelerators that we respect and like. Techstars has been great for us. And then we also have 3 advisors, one in Austin and one in San Francisco and one in Seattle. And those advisors are also a great source of deal flow for us because they're extremely well connected in each of their markets. So the deals come in, then we screen them, with the MBA team does a screening, a competitive analysis, a rating, and then we have kind of an initial call with the entrepreneur, and we kind of figure out what direction we can go. So is this a company that we can look at investing in? And then the second question is, if not, is there something that we can do to help that company along their path, right? Is there a potential customer that they could have a conversation with? Or is there another investor that may be right for them, right? Maybe they're too late in stage for us because we tend to write smaller checks. We'll write checks that are as small as $50,000. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So when you have an angel network inside a university, it's a little bit different world than when it's outside the university. What's unique or different about an angel network that's based inside a university and based on the affinity for the university?
I mean, that's a good question. So we're a bit of a hybrid, right? Because we kind of started as a partnership with an administrator at the university, but we are actually now spun out and independent, but still have a very strong relationship with the university. So I say, that was the approach that we chose to take because on one end of the spectrum, I think an angel network that is within the university, I'd say the pros to that are that you had tremendous access within the university, right, to student entrepreneurs, to university research, to the resources of the university. You're more likely to, connect with, for example, the Stanford Angel Network. They actually are very much a part of the university, and as a result, they have a strong partnership not only with students and faculty, but also, have a relationship with the administrative part of the school and can leverage the brand of Stanford, right? And that's really powerful. It's a very powerful brand. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think you have a private angel group that, that's totally independent, that is not a hybrid. I would point to something like Georgetown Angels, right, which now has rebranded as Rubicon. And that group, they do not have the ability to leverage the brand. They're actually based in New York and San Francisco, so not in D.C. where Georgetown is. And so they have less of a strong kind of benefits from the university, but they have the freedom to go out and write checks and make investments because they are independent. So they can make their own decisions, and they can still draw on the alumni because there's nothing stopping them from that. But they do have the freedom to operate freely, whereas if you're, Stanford or Harvard alumni angels, there are rules that the university will provide to you around, what kinds of operations your group can actually do.
So how are students at the university involved? Are they participating in some way, and if so, how?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, there are 3 current MBA students from the University of Michigan who are part of our team. So, they are our associates, and they come on board during the school year for the 9 months or whatever it is during the school year. And, this is an opportunity for them, not only to kind of build their resume by, practicing, venture investing in the real world and learning it, but they're also kind of, really sharpening their skills in a variety of industries. So they're able to get exposure to a number of different industries. They're able to get on the phone with the CEO of a company where they're, as MBAs, very accustomed to interacting with recruiters and managers. And interacting with a CEO and talking high-level strategy is a very different experience. And hearing from them, it's been a very useful lens for them to be able to kind of filter their class material, right, and to be able to look at a business from such a high level.
All right. So I assume it's a network model. Everybody writes their own check for how much they want to write for what deals they want to pursue. Have you thought about doing any funds or fund models in the Wolverine Angel Network?
That's right. That's exactly right. So we were always a network model where we were connecting investors with investments, and now we have just opened up, an actual pool of capital where there will actually be a fund and alumni. It is restricted to alumni on the investment side, so in order to invest in this vehicle, you do have to have some affiliation to the University of Michigan, but the fund will direct carry back to, obviously, the fund itself, and then, but there will be no fee, right? So that's why we have this hybrid structure. So we have one organization that manages the network and connects people, and we have a completely separate and independent organization that's independent of the school that can actually pool funds and write checks. And so the decision process, again, goes through the MBA diligence, and then ultimately, I'm the decision maker on which companies we invest in, but we do give the investors the opportunity to choose which investments they want to be in or not be in. So it's a bit more like, it functions a lot like an angel list syndicate, if you're familiar with that, where the LPs actually commit funds up front, but have kind of a week or two from being exposed to the deal to say, okay, yes, this is a deal that I'm going to follow on, or no, this is a deal that I'm not going to participate in because I have another investment that where I have a conflict or what have you. So it kind of gives that ability, and it also gives us the ability to connect, companies with their investors when the companies do opt in, but it doesn't increase their cap table. So we invest as one line on the cap table, but it does give companies the ability to reach through that and access the expertise and connections of all of those investors. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Well, you mentioned a key point of a university angel network is the two-entity structure, whereas inside universities it's a nonprofit. There's really no investing because it is a nonprofit, but so the investor has to go outside. Maybe you can tell more about how that works.
Well, to be honest, Paul, we were really intrigued by the model that you pioneered there at Baylor. We think that is a pretty innovative model, with the nonprofit for-profit structure. And we looked at that, a year and a half ago. And then we just now had a conversation about, just a few months ago, where we came to it on our own and said, that's actually the best structure for us, because it enables us to have that relationship with the university, but also enables us to be able to write checks quickly. Right? As you know, it's incredibly important as an investor to put, entrepreneurs first. At least that's our philosophy. And, we feel that raising capital for entrepreneurs is somewhat of a distraction from product and customers, right? A CEO should really kind of be focused on product and customers. He has to focus, or she has to focus on, cash flow and raising money because it's necessary. It's often necessary in order to scale. But we try to make that as painless as possible. And we feel that having a fund where we can make a decision in a matter of a couple of weeks is much more appealing than having a decision process that is hinged upon quarterly investor meetings, right? So we will have quarterly meetings, but that does not drive our investment process, right? Our investment process is when a deal comes in, we screen it within 2 weeks, and we have the ability to potentially make a decision within 4 to 6, and actually be writing a check within that amount of time. So that is a big advantage, not only for us, but it really helps the entrepreneur to know how hard is it going to be to raise this money, and how much of a commitment do I actually have from this group without having to negotiate with several individuals and add several individuals to the cap table. So we feel that that's a pretty strong advantage. It's a heavier lift, as I'm sure you know. It's raising that fund and pulling it together is not easy, but we feel that it can be really beneficial to the startups that we work with.
Well, that's great. That's a good description of it as well, and good description of your model that you have there. Sounds like it's working very well. About how many deals have been funded since the group formed?
So, in our prior model, we know of about 20 to 30 companies that have raised an aggregate of in the tens of millions. Not all through us, but those are the total aggregate of the deals that kind of flowed through our platform, of the companies that flowed through our platform, and how much they've raised in aggregate to date. We actually just started investing as a group, as a syndicate, as a fund, just this year. So right now we're just at 2 investments in the new model, and that is the piece that we're looking to kind of focus on growing. Now we'll still continue to connect investors with entrepreneurs in the event that the deal's not right for us as a group, or where we feel like that is appropriate. We don't have any problem with our investors going and negotiating deals on their own, and we'll facilitate that. But, to the extent that the entrepreneur and the investor do want that, to be consolidated and kind of streamlined through the fund, and to the extent that it meets our criteria, we definitely do that.
Right. So as crowdfunding comes up, how do you see that impacting your group? Does it hurt or does it help? And if so, how?
Crowdfunding helps. It helps us. That's why we were not prepared to raise a fund sooner. Like I said, we looked at that model a year and a half ago, and we decided that wasn't right for us at the time. And now that we do have a lot of the crowdfunding pieces in place, we decided to use a technology platform in order to scale the investor base, so that what we can do is we can pull hundreds of investors into our fund in a very streamlined way, and we can leverage technology to pull those funds as long as they're all accredited investors. Now, will that change as the crowdfunding regulations continue to evolve and we potentially have non-accredited investors being able to invest via crowdfunding into startup companies? Yes. I mean, that will certainly change the landscape. Will we participate in that way? Still too early to tell, right? We understand the accredited crowdfunding rules enough, and we like them enough that we're taking advantage of them, But as far as the non-accredited piece, we're very much looking forward to that coming into play, but we don't know if we'll be able to take advantage of it because, as the SEC is just taking their time and kind of spelling out all the details there.
Right. Well, very good. Well, thank you for taking time to share the information about the Wolverine Angel Network. It sounds like it's going very well, and congratulations on getting your fund up and running. For the listeners, if they want to learn more about it, what's the web address they should go to find out more?
Yeah, so the web address, we actually have two. So one is wolverineangels.com, and the other is bighouse.ventures or bighousevc.com. So the wolverineangels.com is the networking piece, and then bighousevc.com is the fund side.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll close it out for now. Any final words?
No. Thanks for having me, Hall. It was definitely a pleasure to join you.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.